Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the National Labour Congress's first or inaugural panel discussion under the theme, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplaces. I am your moderator, Fiona Charles Williams. At this time, I invite persons to stand as we begin with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank and praise you. Lord, as we go throughout this panel discussion this evening, we ask for clarity, we ask for understanding, and we ask that whatever is discussed here, Lord, will be for the benefit of all workers and for better for our audience, and we continue to thank and praise you. We thank you for our nation. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. We now have the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I invite persons to sing along with me. Saint Vincent and so beautiful, with joyful hearts we pledge to thee our loyalty and love, and vow to keep you ever free. Whatever the future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. I will not fear, and blessed are your mountains, I so clear and green, a home to me. Whatever the future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. Our little sister islands are those gems, the lovely Grenadines, upon their seas and golden suns, the sunshine ever beams. Whatever the future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. Thank you very much. You may be seated. At this time, I invite Sister Tishana Reed Dabrio, General Secretary of the National Labour Congress, to give us opening remarks. Sister Dabrio.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Labour Congress, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to today's panel discussion held under the theme, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplaces. I am honored to welcome you to this important and timely conversation. Today, we come together to explore the critical connection between mental well-being, worker strength, and the creation of healthier, more productive work environments across our nation. We are privileged to be joined by an esteemed panel of professionals who bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and insight to this discussion. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Joselle Miller, Mrs. Shelley-Ann Alexander Ross, Mrs. Kathleen Nanton Davis, and on his way, Mr. Jomo Thomas. Each of our panelists will offer valuable perspectives on how we can collectively foster workplaces that prioritize mental health, support workers, and drive sustainable development. As we engage in this dialogue, I encourage all of us to listen attentively, reflect deeply, and consider how we can contribute to building safer minds, stronger workers, and better workplaces, not just in policy, but in practice. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to a meaningful and impactful discussion.
Thank you very much, Sister Reed Dabrio, our General Secretary. At this time, it gives me the distinct pleasure of introducing our panelists. Dr. Joselle Miller, I'll begin with Dr. Joselle Miller. Dr. Miller is a distinguished health psychologist and wellness consultant based in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, well known for her holistic approach to mental health that integrates body, mind, and spirit. With a deep passion for resilience and emotional intelligence, she serves as both clinician and educator, addressing critical issues such as youth mental health challenges, suicide prevention, and wellness in primary education. Dr. Miller is dedicated to empowering individuals and communities through therapeutic interventions, public speaking, media appearances, encouraging us all to embrace our self-care, emotional literacy, and authentic connection. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Joselle Miller. Next, we have Mrs. Shellyan Alexander Ross. Mrs. Alexander Ross is a highly dedicated registered nurse, certified midwife, and health nursing supervisor with over 23 years of distinguished service in the nursing profession. Her career has been marked by an unwavering commitment to patient care, public health, and the advancement of the nursing profession in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She possesses a strong academic and professional foundation, holding a Bachelor's of Science degree in Public Health Nursing and a Master's of Science degree in Public Sector Management. Her professional qualifications are further strengthened by certification in Occupational Health and Safety, International Labor Standards, with a focus on occupational health and safety, OSH, and workplace violence, along with training in industrial relations and numerous areas of trade union education and practice. Her vibrancy, passion for service, and unwavering commitment to advocating on behalf of others inspired her active involvement in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Public Service Union. Mrs. Alexander Ross currently serves as General Secretary, a role she has held since 2022. In addition to her trade union leadership, she presently serves as the President of the Nurses Association of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a position which she has held since 2024. In this capacity, she continues to champion the welfare of nurses, strengthening professional standards, and advocate for the advancement of healthcare workers throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mrs. Shellyan Alexander Ross. Next, we have Mrs. Kathleen Nanton Davis. Mrs. Nanton Davis has dedicated over 26 years of service to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She began her career as a police officer before transferring to the Inland Revenue Department, where she currently serves as counter supervisor, managing frontline operations and supporting licensing duties. She holds a bachelor's degree in social work from the Jamaica Theological Seminary with a minor in human behavior, and and additional training in project management and occupational safety and health. This academic foundation complements her extensive practical experience in the public service, equipping her with skills in counseling, human resources, policy management, and organizational leadership. Beyond her departmental duties, Kathleen has served on the board for the Public Service Union as grievance officer, advocating for fairness, transparency, and worker protection. She has also held leadership roles in the Police Credit Union and the Credit Union League, demonstrating her commitment to governance, accountability, and the well-being of workers and communities. Her blend of frontline service, administrative expertise, and board-level leadership uniquely positions her as a voice for positive change in labor relations, workplace safety, and the national development. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Kathleen Nanton Davis. Our final panelist who is on his way is none other than Mr. Jomo Sanga Thomas, a lawyer in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, former Speaker of the House of Assembly, a renowned journalist who publishes weekly articles in the Vincentian newspaper and Eyewitness News, a human rights activist, host of Voices talk show which airs on Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jomo Sanga Thomas. So at this time, as the moderator, I am going to just outline what is going to take place next. We are going to invite our panelists to give just a brief 5-minute presentation on the topic, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, a Better Workplace, or Better Workplaces. And after that, we will have guided questions to the panelists and the panelists' responses and interaction. We would invite questions at that time from persons on the floor as well as persons online. So at this time, I'm going to ask none other than Dr. Miller, who I notice is gently handling her mic, to begin her presentation. Dr. Miller.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I like the topic, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplaces, because for me, it has brought back the humanity into the workplace. I think for a very long time, we have seen, or we have had an understanding that the workplace is almost like we are driving machinery. And we often forget that human beings are the ones who are actually producing the output that we are seeking to have. And in looking at this topic, I specifically wanted to look at the different generations in terms of the workforce, where we are at now. And zoning in specifically to the millennials, which are persons born 1981 to 2000, and 2001 to 2020, the Gen Zs or the Zoomers. Why I'm zoning in on these particular generations? Previously, the older generations were considered to be the traditionalist worker, meaning these are the persons who were the diehards that they stuck out whatever the situation, the circumstances. Now we are seeing that there's a global trend where persons are now a bit more determined to set the pace for themselves in terms of what they expect as employees. Perhaps it's not seen a lot in the public sector, being within the public service, but especially in the private sector, we are now seeing what is called the Great Resignation reality, where persons are willing to walk away from a job because it is deemed to be toxic, it is deemed to be a space where it no longer serves them as individuals, there's no space for growth, and it is becoming psychologically unsafe and undervaluing. With this in mind, we have now recognized that there has also been a significant paradigm shift, mainly recognizable since COVID, where persons are now at the point where you understand that mental health, mental wellness has to be a core prerequisite within the workforce. That we no longer take it for granted that somebody is functional and just simply look at the fact that they are showing up on time, they are producing, they are leaving, and they are coming back. There are so many other facets that we have to now consider that even as somebody is showing up, they may not be in the good mental and emotional space. With that said, we understand that mental wellness can no longer just focus on stress management and, just talking about information related to mental health, but rather it has to be a core prerequisite that now, even when you're taking persons on into the workforce, you have to look in terms of their cognition, their mental ability, but you also have to look at their emotional intelligence. You have to be able now to look at how able is an individual to regulate their emotional space, and more so, how can we coexist and fit in with other employees and other persons around us. It is one thing to say that we have a safe mind, but what does that mean? A safe mind speaks of psychological safety, where someone feels that I am able to express my thought process without being ridiculed or criticized, without being condemned, being in a position where even if I differ from the majority, that I still have a space where I can express myself because this is my stance and I can be given the opportunity to defend that. We often look in terms of understanding that a strong worker is someone who can withstand stress. So we place persons in a lot of high stress situations where you are given an exceedingly big workload, and there are persons who, because of their dedication, will push themselves extremely hard to make sure that they can fulfill the task at hand. But we are now recognizing that even as persons are doing that and you're fulfilling the task, you're recognizing that persons get to the point of retirement after working tediously for how many years, and within months, they're gone, because their health would have deteriorated as a result of putting in all of the efforts within the workforce. And we have to now get to the point where we emphasize balance, that persons need to know that even as I am putting out, the output is good, but is it at the risk of my own mental safety, my own emotional and physical safety, that I am not at a point where I am functioning for myself or even my family members. So we think in terms of the things that can happen within our workforce that can now create a space whereby we can say for a fact that we have better workplaces. Meaning now that we have the introduction of things like employees assistance programs, where we recognize that persons need to have mental health days, where we recognize where persons as well need to have moments where, even if I am saying that I cannot come into work today and I do not have a physical ailment, but emotionally I am unable to manage, that supervisors, managers are still able to recognize that I need to give leeway to that individual because of various things that may be going on. When we step into the workforce, we step in with our qualifications, but we also step in with all of the other compartments of our lives, be it that we have a family, we have responsibilities within our family, in our communities, in our churches, and all the different various spaces that sometimes will be pulling us and stretching us thin. So we have to now think, when we think of a better workplace, what does that really look like? And I'm just going to stay there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. Next, we will have our able-bodied and ably ready to go nurse.
I'm already ready to go.
Sister Shelley-Ann Alexander Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just yesterday we celebrated International Oral Health Safety Day, and these are some of the things that was discussed at a very engaging seminar that we had yesterday. Safe minds, strong workers, better workplace. Better workplaces for everybody. This theme, when I look at it, it reflects a modern, comprehensive approach to workplace health, and it sets the priority for psychosocial well-being along with the traditional physical well-being and safety. Okay, thank you. Right, so we have, traditionally we are accustomed to putting a lot of emphasis on, use my trade union voice, a lot of emphasis on the physical aspect or safety of workers. But this theme that is presenting to us is mandating us to change the trajectory or the way things have been going, or things have to go in terms of navigating the way forward. We know and understand the narrative that if you have workers that are comfortable, that are happy, that are safe, quite naturally, you're going to have workers that are going to perform. It is linked to productivity. If we have to look at the various components in the theme, the core components, I should say, safe minds, and we're talking here, as we heard before, about mental well-being, and creating that, we're talking about creating a culture where employees feel respected, feel loved, feel that they value, they feel inclusive, they feel like they're part of the equation, part of what makes the mill run. And ever so often we have employers who are bent on the productivity aspect. And I'm happy that Dr. Miller mentioned the bringing back of the team is going to help us to look at, okay, these are human beings. These are not machines that you just program and let them do the work. These are persons, real people with feelings, real people with issues that needs to be addressed. And therefore we have to look beyond just programming persons just to be productive and look at the complete individual. We have to break that stigma that surrounds that anything you talk, anything mental, that you are crazy, in quotation. We have to break that, because all of us, I'm sure at some point in our lives, we have days when we feel like we just need to let off some steam. We just need to get away from the workplace a little bit. We just need to hide away ourselves so that we can recuperate and we can get our minds up and running so that we can be at our best. And that is what we have some employers, or a lot of employers and supervisors, don't take into consideration. And therefore, we as trade unions have to push and to make sure that the employers, they have a duty of care to ensure that the environment in which workers work is conducive, not only physically, so that they can function and reduce the stress. When we look at strong workers, we are thinking about an empowered workforce. An empowered workforce that is going to have the necessary skills and competencies to function, because we have persons who are academically inclined. It's not that they're dumb and can't do the work, but the environment in terms of the psychological aspect may not permit them to function at their best. And therefore, it is high time in the 21st century that we look at the whole individual rather than just, which is what businesses and companies will look at the end of the day, productivity, productivity. But this theme is focus or giving us an opportunity to refocus or retool and to look at things differently in terms of how we may want to do it. The better workplace aspect of it is looking at where we can create a positive culture within the workplace. It just goes beyond, okay, compliance with the safety regulations and the protocols, but look at how we can make individuals better, how we can develop persons professionally and personally to be better individuals. And if you're better individuals, if you're happy, if you're put in an environment where you're respected and you're valued and you feel included in what is happening, we are going to have workers that are going to produce. And if workers produce and they're more productive, we are going to have a better nation altogether. We also want to look at some key actions for implementation. What can we do? We have to have leaders who are committed to the cause. We have to have supervisors and employers who see the need to have that discussion where persons' mental health are valued. You might want to say, okay, well, implement a mental health day. Because sometimes if you call in for duty, you can't make it for duty. People start to think, and it's culture now, oh, probably she's lazy and she don't want to do it. We have to step away from that persons might just need that day to get themselves together mentally. And the quicker we look at it, it's going to be better for us and better for individuals generally. So we're talking about changing the culture because the culture is what it is and we want to have that change. We want to be able to encourage persons to manage psychological risk, the overwork, the too much work, the burnt out, the poor support from the system that is supposed to help you to function, and the programs that are available that persons have access to, that they can reach out to get themselves together. Yesterday we heard, in all of the presentations, you heard about communication, how effective communication can be when persons are included, when the right mediums are used, when you do assessment as to the root cause of things so that you can put things in place to either prevent or to manage what has already occurred. We know that a safe workplace is a shared responsibility. The employer has their responsibility. The employee has their responsibility. The institution is supposed to put the necessary things in place, the operational manuals, the policies, etc. And the trade unions or the labor organizations have their responsibility to make sure that employers are doing what they're supposed to do to ensure that employees are safe, and therefore they'll be stronger workers, and therefore at the end of the day we will have better workplaces where persons are going to produce and love coming to work. I don't know how many of you, maybe sometimes we sit in our cars and you're trying to muster the energy and the vibe to go in because you're thinking, oh my, we don't want people to be sitting in their cars and thinking, oh my God, that place again? I have to go there again today? We want persons to get up in the morning as they take the bread, they give thanks and they're excited to go to the place of work. And we're hoping that the day will come when we will see that kind of an environment where workers are going to be happy and safe. And of course, the trade unions are the ones who would have to be part of that tripartite discussion to make sure that everything goes accordingly or as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley-Ann. That was thought-provoking. Last, but by no means certainly least, we have Mrs. Nanton Davis, who will give her presentation, and after which I have some questions for the panelists. You know, I like to be devil's advocate, so we would have some questions here, the panelists would answer, and after which we'd have questions from the audience.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Our theme today, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplace, is more than a slogan. It is a call to action. It reminds us that the strength of any workforce depends not only on skills and productivity, but on the safety of our environment and the health of our minds. As 3 John 1:2 declares, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers." This verse reminds us that prosperity and health are inseparable, both in our personal lives and in our workplaces. Most of you who know me, you know I have a passion for the OSH policy. So I'm going to speak a little about that. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we passed the Occupational Safety and Health Act in 2016. Yet, many of its provisions remain unutilized. Too often, workplaces lack clear risk assessments, safety committees, and enforcement mechanisms. Without strong implementation, policies remain words on paper. Compare this to countries like Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom, where OSH frameworks are actively enforced. They conduct regular audits, empower workers to refuse unsafe work, and integrate psychosocial risks like stress and burnout. And many of us can attest to that. The stresses and the burnout, not just from home, but transitions into our workplace. These examples show us what is possible when policies are matched with practice. On mental health, safe minds are the foundation of strong workers. The World Health Organization estimates that mental health challenges cost the global economy over US $1 trillion each year in lost productivity. In the Caribbean, studies reveal high stress levels among public servants, compounded by stigma that keeps many from seeking help. And many of us can attest to this. We get burnout, we get stressed, and sometimes we don't have that proper avenue, or we are afraid to speak about it. We cannot ignore this. A workplace that neglects mental health is a workplace that undermines its own strengths. Confidentiality counseling services, resilient workshops, and anti-stigma training are not luxuries. They are necessities. They protect workers from burnout and ensure that our Caribbean, our country, because I was more looking at this from the income tax standpoint, can indeed be a thriving nation or country. From the trade union perspective, as the International Trade Union Confederation reminds us, decent work is not a privilege, it is a right. This means every worker deserves fair wages, safe conditions, and respect for their mental and physical health. When unions and employees work together, the result is not conflict, but collaboration, stronger workers and stronger institutions. Now, I know some of us here, occupational safety and health, and immediately think of hard hats and steel boots. But let's be honest, I was looking at it in the income tax standpoint, the biggest hazard is probably a paper cut or the stress of chasing deadlines or getting our targets. But if we were to look at it in the context of each department, we will be able to tick off what our concerns are. Safety matters. Sometimes the best protection is not a helmet, but a listening ear and a supportive policy. So what is the call to action? What can we do? Strengthen OSH enforcement with regular audits and safe committees. But then I know many of you may say, we need to get it off the shelf, we need to dust it, and we need to put it into action. Of course. Promote mental health through confidential support and flexible work arrangements. And my sisters alluded over and over about this. Adapt the policies, the principles of decent work, fair wages, equal opportunities, and participatory dialogue. By investing in safety and mental health, we are not just complying with policies, we are building stronger workers, safer workplaces, and a more resilient St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let us commit today to move beyond words. Let us ensure that every worker in this nation can say, my mind is safe, my work is strong, and my workplace is better. And let us remember and encourage a quote from the Bible, beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in good health, just as your soul prosper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Davis. And now, questions. Well, I have a few, and I am going to call on our esteemed nurse first to answer this question. However, any panelists can join in at any point in time they wish to, because I would really like to have this segment of it be somewhat conversational. Okay? Shelley-Ann, you mentioned that we need to get to the point where persons should be excited to go to work, right? What are some practical steps you would advise organizations to take to reduce workplace stress and burnout and that general feeling of, I don't really want to go to work? How can we reduce that?
No, must go first. The thing is, Fiona, we have to get to the point where we understand that we're living in a different era. We're living in a time where we have now shifted from the regular, just making sure that you have fair wages and so forth, and now have to look at the whole person, the worker as a person, as an individual, as a human being. We first have to recognize that. And after we would have done that, we have to do an analysis of, or an assessment, I should say, a risk assessment as to what can possibly happen if we are not taking into consideration that this individual, or we need to go more than just looking at the physical environment. Another thing we can do is to include persons in what is happening, because we need an environment where persons can feel free to speak, feel free to give ideas, feel free to say what is on their mind, so that, you know, they feel a part of. Because you get more out of persons if they are part of the equation, if they're included in what you're trying to do.
You mean like the decision-making process?
Right. Communication is another. An effective communication, that is, because sometimes we just think, okay, communication is, all right, I give you a directive, you follow it, and so forth. And what happens too is that you don't have practical examples of how persons can have, or how they can have mental or psychosocial or psychological wellness. So you can have some things, measures in your department that you might want to try. For example, I know some countries have mental health days. They have days where persons can get off if you have endometriosis or other conditions that would contribute to you not being able to function. So it's an opportunity for us to make it as practical as possible. But first, we have to come to the realization that we need to change our way of thinking. We need to change our direction. We need to, in order for us to go forward, in order for us to navigate, we must rethink and retool what can make persons feel happy and comfortable. And you have to discuss it with them. And some of the things are not far-fetched. They're things that we can have a conversation with the workers, include them into the conversation, and see how we can make it better for them, because we understand the work.
Okay, so I would also like. Hi. Okay, I would also like to add the fact that even before we start thinking in terms of system and what can we change from a system level, we have to look at the individuals. And I would have recognized that there are a lot of persons who are employed, they are in certain jobs, but they're not passionate about their jobs. It is not something that they themselves really want to do, but it's a means to an end. So even sometimes when we have situations like that I'm just doing this for a paycheck, it means then that even if systems are in place that can help for growth and development, if that individual is not applying themselves, you may also come up short where that person might still feel literally that it's a task, it's a chore. It is not something that I enjoy. It's not something that I see myself actually developing my skill set or my, it is just a matter that means to an end, and I go through it, and it's like literally beating a dead horse. One of the other things that we have to bear in mind is that communication speaks in terms of a two-way or three-way pathway. That sometimes when we think of communication, it's usually top-down, and we have to also have that approach where it is bottom-up as well. But more so, we have to spend a lot more time focusing on reinforcement rather than just punitive measures. Sometimes persons are only called into a meeting for punitive measures. Something went wrong. But what about commending, hey, great effort. I noticed X, Y, Z. I see where you have improved. And it's important as well to do needs assessments and evaluations at the start. Let workers themselves set goals for themselves so that even as they go through the process, 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever, you bring them back to the point, have you achieved the goals that you started with? Because now we have to be able to enable persons to understand that you are part and parcel the product. You have to apply yourself. A lot of times it is always the external bringing in, offering, doing. But what are you yourself doing and bringing to the table? So when you set goals as a worker for yourself, individually first, and then within your department, within your ministry or whatever the case is, then you're now in a better position to see where you are as an agent within this whole mechanism to make it work and make it functional.
Thank you very much. Just before you speak, I will now invite our lone gentleman to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jomo Samuel Thomas. I'm sure he would fit just right in, right? I'm sure you'd fit just right in. You'll fit in. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Good afternoon again. I would like to take it from what can ministries implement. Many times we hear workers say the only thing you will get is a bouquet of flowers on your grave. And sometimes it might be fitting, but it is something that is often said, because you can give to a department and you're not recognized. And as my sister said, a simple acknowledgement of saying, well done, or a small accolade or something, it boosts morale and it encourages a person to give 100 more. And sometimes that is being overlooked. We recognize persons on their way out instead of when they're continuing through the journey. And that is something that I hope that my brother Barry's, I hope the streaming is well, and I hope it reaches the right audience. I think we can implement a model healthy practice, which is it encourages balanced workloads. Many times we hear our colleagues say, I am overworked. And sometimes you may hear a manager say, you might hear this in the mind. You ever hear that? You ever hear somebody, you could read somebody's mind? You can read their facial expression of saying, you did not even do any work. But yet, you as the employee, you as the junior member, you know the workload that you carry. You can have flexible scheduling and respect for rest periods. And as a supervisor, having to supervise cashiers who are on the front line, that each of you who have a driver's license or you may pay your property tax, you would have come into income tax and they greet you warmly, and they're there from 7:30 to 4:15 on a good day. That's on a good day. But sometimes they're there beyond. Well, I'm sure all the other departments in Kingston would have already journeyed home. And my take on that is giving a rest day, because it is needed sometimes. Just to have that day to just relax, just to unwind at home, it takes a lot off. I think it just takes off some fat for that day. And you come back to work the next day looking slim, like you went on a vacation. So I think that is needed sometimes in departments. Training and education. Equipped managers with skills to recognize early signs of burnout and responsible support. Employee assistance programs. This provides counseling, peer support, and referral services. And I can tell you from the Inland Revenue Department, we have persons who have burnouts. And I think the ministry offers counseling, which I think is very good. And I do hope that as public servants, we capitalize on that. There is an avenue for us to go and vent, so please, let's take that opportunity. Participatory approach. It involves workers and unions in designing mental health strategies, ensuring buy-in and relevance. The psychosocial risk assessments, regular evaluation, evaluate stress factors, job demands, and organizational cultures. This, I think, is very important, and we need persons who are trained in this area who can come and analyze and assess organizational factors. And I was still there.
Okay. Seeing that Mr. Thomas is with us, I'm going straight to Mr. Thomas. Our theme, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplaces. How do you see this from your perspective as a legal counsel?
Hello. Good afternoon. Firstly, I want to apologize for being late. I had a meeting that began at 3, and I really thought it would have ended at about 4. And I couldn't get my team away from the meeting. It was a meeting with one of those government authority, so I truly apologize for being late. must say I was rather surprised when I heard that there was supposed to be a panel discussion that runs for 4 hours. In all of my years, I've never heard of such a thing. But I guess, welcome to a new beginning. Your team, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplace, I think is an apt topic for discussion because I'm not sure how many of us recognize it, but St. Vincent and the Grenadines has a serious mental health problem. I know all of us, or probably most of us, the overwhelming majority of us, believe that we are sane, and indeed we may be quite sane, but that does not mean that we do not have mental health issues and problems. Safe Minds. How do we guarantee that we develop the kind of mental health to put ourselves in a place where we can say that we are safe? We are safe from ourselves, and we are safe in our interaction with our colleagues. I think that is critically important because all kind of issues may trip us up. All kind of issues may create difficulties at the workplace. And if we are truly taking care of our mental health, I think we would better be able to create environments at work that would make for a more organized, a more efficient, a more worker-friendly environment, which in turn would allow for a greater amount of productivity at work, a greater amount of community between those persons who are in the workplaces that we spend a lot of time. So you can have a strong, I remember when I was young, we used to talk about trade union consciousness, and we used to talk about working class consciousness. And when we say trade union consciousness, and I'm talking about this in the context that this matter, this panel discussion this evening is being brought to us by the National Labor Congress. When we say trade union consciousness, we are talking about the recognition by workers that as part of a trade union, they are better for it. That you have the consciousness of mind to know that if you are organized, sometimes even with a sellout trade union, you are better off than if you are not organized. Because even with a sellout trade union, the employer, even though he thinks he has the trade union in his or her pocket, would still have to give something. In the instance where you are not organized in a trade union, the employer may feel that he doesn't have to give anything. Classic example, Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men in the world, does everything to ensure that the workers in Amazon are not trade unionized. So you want to have trade union consciousness to know that by organizing, you are in a better place. And if you have that kind of strength of consciousness, then I think you would develop safer minds because you would develop solidarity with your co-workers and so on. When we talk about working class consciousness, we are now talking about a level of consciousness which is higher than trade union consciousness. It is the kind of consciousness where workers understand that not only are they a class in themselves, but with working class consciousness, you are a class for yourself. So the classic example in St. Vincent is you have a lot of trade union division, or you have, as I have said time and time again, when I was growing up, when I was young, you had a lot of institutions in the society that people relied on. People had a lot of respect for teachers, people had a lot of respect for professionals, people had a lot of respect for preachers, the church, school. Now, 46, 47 years after independence, the singular most important institution in our country is the political party. So people would abandon their class position. So for example, a union is doing something that is right, defending their interests. But workers would say, my party in power, this union is doing something looking for my rights, but I can't go out on the picket line. I can't give active support because this would show up my party. But the trade union consciousness allows you to see, even when it is your party, that you have to get to the point, the level of consciousness to say that solidarity with my brothers and sisters, solidarity with my union is paramount, particularly where that issue or issues which my union is defending and articulating is in the interest not only of workers, but in the interest of the country. So I think that clearly from the National Labor Congress, we have to fight again to build back trade union consciousness, to get workers to understand that it is important to be part of the union, to be represented. I had a gentleman who came to me recently. He had a civil servant. He had a problem with the way in which his employer was dealing with him. But he was not in the union. He didn't think it was necessary to be in the union. And then he got smacked down, and he rushed to the union. So I think all of us need to get to that point where we want to see a union as our brother's keeper. We want to see the union and the trade unionists as someone who's good for us. Even the worst of them are better than no unionization at all. So we want trade union consciousness. And then once we build that, once we consolidate that trade union consciousness, we want to get to the point even better where we have working class consciousness. But I think the higher level of consciousness we have is the better position we would be in, because we would have clearer minds, we would have stronger workers, solidarity and unity, we would have greater, stronger trade unions. And I think in the end, that would assist us in have a better workplace. So those are my introductory thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. We would field questions from the audience in about 2 minutes' time. Now, to continue on what Mr. Thomas just mentioned about trade union consciousness, this question is directed at Shellyan and Kathleen, specifically Shellyan, and Kathleen, you could jump in at any time. What role should the trade unions play in advocating for mental health and other protection for workers? This is a specific question now. Considering safe minds, what role can the trade unions play in advocating for mental health and other protection for workers?
So trade unions, by nature, they're supposed to be organizations that fight on workers' behalf. And we have tried to maintain the tripartite relationship that gives us the opportunity to act on workers' behalf. So one of the tools that trade unions would often use is the collective bargaining agreement, which is a written contract between the workers and the employer that is negotiated through the trade unions. So in that tool or that document, we have an opportunity not only to lobby for the traditional things that workers should have, uniforms, allowances, etc., but we have an opportunity to put in that document interventions or strategies that are going to appeal directly to persons' mental health and hold the employers accountable for enforcing the document that would be signed. We also have an opportunity to ensure that laws are in place. My sister here spoke about the OSH Act that have been sitting since 2017, still waiting to be enforced. And throughout the document, it holds the employer, they have a duty of care to ensure that workers have a conducive environment to work, and we're going beyond the physical aspect. So we have tools, and we can talk about the conventions that are available, the C-190 and the C-155, that are recognized globally, that we are supposed to ratify. And we've been talking about the C-190 for quite some time. We have good news that it's on the way in terms of ratification, but that's for another time. So we are at a point, a critical point, where we have these documents and we have the relationship, or we long for that we are getting that relationship at this point because we have a better relationship now, where we can continue to lobby for workers using these instruments that we can hold workers or employers accountable. And not only are we want them to ratify these documents, but we have to ensure that we follow up to make sure that policies are in place in the departments, in the units, that reflects what is in the document. We have to ensure evaluation is important, because sometimes we sign on, we implement, but we never get to really check to make sure that the employers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I'll leave Kathy to complete the rest.
Yes. Specifically, since she mentioned the OSH Act of 2016, so I think she would want to zero in there.
So if we are serious about creating safe minds, strong workers, and better workplace, then we must recognize the vital role of trade unions. They are the collective voice of workers, ensuring that dignity, justice, and fairness are not just ideas, but realities. We, the PSU, have been fighting tirelessly, and it's not a battle we are going to lose, where the OSH policy will be effective, and we will continue to work in the rights for our workers, because the workers of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are the backbone of this country. And policies must be put in place to strengthen that backbone, to strengthen our workers. And some of the things that can be implemented, I spoke about a few, but it is something that our government will have to have a talk with us at the heads or PSU presidents and other directors, so that the proper policies that fits every department will be put into place.
All right.
add, Madam Chair, the importance of collaboration with other trade unions. That is vital, because we know that we're all fighting for the same cause. And if they're standing in solidarity with us and we're standing in solidarity with them, it creates a stronger bond and put us in a better place in terms of fighting on behalf of the workers.
Right, right. And that was more so evident during the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Do we have any questions from the floor at this time? Okay, yes. There's a question. Mike, please.
Hello. Yes, Madam Chair. I want to make some small points. I want to commend the panelists for their contribution and to add in terms of practical things. And for example, I have negotiated agreements where, for example, an employee is going to do exams for the university. So we have 2 days before the exam, they get 2 days off with pay. So they could be in a state where they prepare themselves for the exam. And I want to make a recommendation. And the recommendation is that trade unions must ensure that even some employees might not appreciate what the union is doing for them. That would put them in a good frame of mind. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I got a call that an employee working with a big institution, member the union, was hospitalized. And what is the employer's concern? That 2 days have passed, the lady is in the hospital, but they ain't get no medical certificate yet. You understand? Not her well-being. No medical certificate reached the office, but they know that she is in the hospital. So I just give that as an example. On the other hand, when I got into the trade union business, we represent people who work at the cemetery, people who work at thing. Dr. Cordis, of blessed memory, was in charge of the public health. And we agreed that every single worker must have a health check every year. Now, I am not supposed to be running behind the people who are in charge to remind them year after year that you have to organize it, you the employer. Make provision and time so that your employees can go and get the annual medical check. But people come to me, people work in the cemetery, people digging graves, and complaining that when they're asked to be sent to the doctor, they give them some excuse. There's supposed to be no excuse for that. During the period when Dr. Cordis was there, it was mandatory. He told his people, make sure every year to send the people for the medical check. But I receive complaints now where people working in the cemetery, they digging graves, they put in aside things, and the employer, which is government, not giving them the opportunity to get their medical checks. So I just use that as examples. Now, I was telling the president here, I have a good friend. He runs a business, employing a lot of people, outside of government, private operation. And he said to me one day, you know, when I'm driving coming into town, or going out of town, and people are going to work, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, he said that he can look when the vehicle stop to see the interaction between both parties in the vehicle. And he said to me, that means trouble at the workplace when they reach the work. Because if you're leaving home and you're not on all fours, and it never dawned on me until in a discussion, because if you leave home to go to work, you could not be productive if there's something else bothering you. And that is a very important thing. Very, very important. And I want to commend the panelists for raising some of these very questions and to let people be aware that it is not just turning up to work. You can turn up, but you can't be productive if something else is bothering you. And the employer, as one of the panelists made the point, the employer could make an observation and knows when something is wrong at the workplace. So I want to commend the panelists and to just share those few words based on experience. And to say that the trade union movement is a lifesaver for workers all over the world. And I am glad you raised the question of the Ash Bill. I participated when we were discussing it at the level of the government doing it, and you brought in different people from different institutions. One person who made a very good contribution is now a minister in the government. And he was making the point in terms of the space, the place you work, your workplace, because based on the ARCH program, the ventilation, all these things, very important. Very, very, very important. And that provision is made. But some of the employers at the time were objecting to, because they think it is an expense to make the workplace conducive to you, the employee. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bonnie. Do we have a specific question from the audience? Okay. Yes, you can. Go ahead. We would have.
I have a question, President. Good evening to everyone. And I want to commend the panelists for doing a great job. I have a question, but I have a few points, if I may, if I'm permitted. The first question is, when I listened and we spoke about the collective agreement, and upon reflection, I want to find out, why is it that when you are given a letter of appointment, why is it they don't put the collective agreement as part of the reference? Because they would say you are subject to the civil service orders and all this kind of thing. And probably that is why some of the people who are supposed to enforce the regulations, they don't bother with us. So I'm asking that question. Is it possible that we could get the authorities to put the collective agreement as one of the documents? Because the government, in our case as trade unions, public sector unions, we represent workers in the public sector. And it's the government that signed that with us. So that should be part of the government's responsibility. I want to say that man is a holistic being. And whereas tonight we are focusing on the mental part, all the other parts are interconnected. And I share the view that a lot of the issues we're having now, they happened way back then. These things are not new. because the greatest psychologist, the greatest counselor was Jesus. Some people don't believe in Christianity. But in my view, that is why he said, whatsoever things are good and so on and so forth. He said, think on these things. He pointed to the mental part of man, the mind. Some people say it's the heart. Those words sometimes are used interchangeably. Not the physical heart here. Center of your thinking, that part that controls, sometimes they say it's the brain, but not this one in the body. You know, the whole issue of emotional intelligence. And the sister at the end here, while you were speaking, everything you said pointing back to in the days of Jesus. When he said, come and take a little rest. Some of our workers, we push ourselves so far that sometimes the time for eating, whether it's lunch or whatever, you forget. You're so caught up in what you're doing, and you don't take that little time to go and nourish your body. And that is important. So, burnt out is a crucial issue, and we have to address that. Because as a man thinketh in his heart, in his mind, so is he. A lot of the issues sometimes are at workplace conflict. Simple matters of how do you respect somebody else's opinion. And all that is part of our emotional intelligence. The strong worker is not only physical, yes, you need that, depending on the nature of the job. But a lot of our workers, they don't have job specification, not even job descriptions. Right? And those are two very important documents you need also. But the final point I want to make has to do with focus. Because that is how you have strong workers also. You have to understand the mission and the vision of what the organization. You're not just there to sit on a chair and play on the computer whole day. It must be meaningful. It must be related to the task at hand. So whereas we look at as trade unions, yes, we are fighting for, we must also look at the other side of the coin and say to our workers, you must be productive, you must be professional, go to work on time, do an honest day's work or a honest month's work, and don't worry about the money. Remember, a lot of things about the mind, what happened way back in, and Jesus said, what he said? Don't worry about what you should eat and what you should drink. He was talking about the future. Those things will happen. And sometimes we sit at the workplace and we worry. And the more we worry, we're making ourselves handicapped. So thank you. I could say more, but I think I've said what I've had to say.
Just hold on. Do any of the panelists wish to address anything that was said by the two persons?
I just want to follow up on what Brother Bonady mentioned. He spoke of the annual checkups that workers should have received. But if we go a bit further, I think a wellness check within each department sometimes is needed. You can have a schedule where your workers can go to a confidential counselor and they can vent, they can speak freely, knowing that whatever they offload will be kept confidential and that they will get the help that is needed. Because many times you hear workers say, I'm leaving my stress at the door and I'll pick it up when I'm leaving. Or I'll leave my baggage at the door or whatever. And we don't want our workers, ourselves, to have to leave home with baggage or stress to go and add more or to get more at our workplaces, or where it should be free from harassment. You should have good ventilation. Your workspace should be a place where you can breathe freely and you can give more of yourselves. In this way, it paves the way for maximum effort so that persons will be able to not only dwell well at work, but carry it into their family lives and be better contributors within their communities. Thank you.
To speak to Brother Robbie asked a question about why is it that when you receive your appointment letter, it doesn't mention anything about or reference the collective bargaining agreement. We are aware that the collective bargaining agreement is a legal document, and it is critical or crucial, I should say, for this to be established, the legal framework to be established of the employment relations and to ensure compliance and setting the clear expectations. We were aware of that, we're on the same page. However, the collective bargaining agreement has to be in place first, what we are fighting for the public servants. And this gives us an opportunity, understanding the importance of it being included in the letter, for us to make that advancement in terms of ensuring that when it is established or when it is signed, that it is referenced within that letter. So the opportunity is there for the trade unions to push for that inclusion.
I think one of the things we have to also pay attention to is where the law stipulates there, because in our country, it is not mandatory that every public servant be a part of a union, right? And I think that is perhaps something that we may have to explore in the future, because it is that way, specifically in Grenada. Well, I know for the teachers in Grenada that every teacher must be a part of the union. That is something that they would have bargained for, and that is perhaps something we need to explore in the future. I'm not sure if Council would agree with me where that is concerned.
If I could just
I'm in total
answer
agreement.
one quick question before you start, Jomo. Remember the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Mr. Bonady, let Mr. Thomas speak, please.
No, that is a connection, just to clarify something. Remember, we have ratified documents from the International Labour Organization by law. The freedom to associate, the freedom to do this, the freedom to do that. The government has already ratified that, so it ties in with the point made by the last speaker in relation to the legality of the collective agreement.
Yeah, I am in total support of the idea that once you have a collective bargaining agreement, and even outside of the collective bargaining agreement, that if you're a part of an organization represents workers, that organization, that all the members in that establishment should be part of the union. So if it's teachers, all teachers should be, public workers, all public workers should be. I remember during the days of the Grenada Revolution, one of the things that the government did was to pass a compulsory recognition law. So once the majority of workers at any given workplace supported a union, the employer had to recognize that union as the representative of the workers in that factory or establishment, whatever it was. So I don't think that there's the government has to have the wherewithal to pass the kind of laws that would benefit its citizens. I don't see any drawback at all in making it mandatory that workers who are involved in a compulsory, in a collective bargaining arrangement, all of them should be. I know that during the last administration, there was talk about passing a legal professional act, which should govern the work of lawyers. And it's being continued by this administration. And one of the things, once that's passed, all of the lawyers have to be part of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Bar Association. That's the way it should be, because these are organizations that look out for those persons who are involved in one organization or the other. And I don't see how it should be possible at all that people are advocating for you and you are not doing what you ought to do. For example, you're not making financial contributions, you're not participating in what the organization, the trade union is doing. So yeah, I'm in total support.
Okay, thank you. We'll have one final question, I think, from Brother Boucher.
Questions. I have two questions. One, firstly, for Dr. Miller. You made reference to the program that is run within the public service. Is it the EAP? Right. Many of us really are not even aware of it, right? Just to say that. But what is one policy or cultural shift based on what you have experienced thus far that every department within the public service should adopt in order to improve workers' mental well-being? That is one question. So I'm just going to ask both of them and then you can respond. The other question to the general panel. Mental health. During COVID, public servants were forced to be vaccinated, mandatory. There are those who took it and it created great stress. There are those who didn't and it also created stress. But in particular for those who took it, what I have been seeing and hearing from what they have been saying, there is still that fear that all may not be well with them. They have looked at the news, per se, and the high death rates that came after. And persons have made the comparison. There are people, of course, who have done their research, and which seems to indicate that there may be medical issues awaiting those persons who are forced to be vaccinated. So they're living with that particular fear. How do you suggest that those persons deal with that sort of mental issue? Because it can be debilitating at times. Everything that really happens, they blame it back on the vaccine, which it may not be or it may be.
Okay, thank you for that question or questions. I'll try my best to respond. As it relates to the Employees Assistance Program, now this is a program that was recently started, I think, roughly could be about, 4+ years now. And it is basically to allow an avenue for public servants to find a space, a safe space that they can go and basically offload. It provides not just the psychological counseling, but in terms of even financial counseling. It offers help for persons who might be alcoholics or anything like that. It also provides education, because we have a lot of misconceptions as it relates to mental health and understanding the difference between mental illness versus mental health. We all have mental health, And we look at mental illness along a spectrum that at different points, there are different things that can be triggering or overwhelming for individuals. So what we have to constantly keep doing is keep educating persons to understand themselves. I think too often we are at a point where everybody's pointing fingers about the next person, but you have to look inwardly first. When we get to know ourselves, you start to understand and identify changes within yourself. When you are able now to identify these changes, you know when you need to seek help. A big discussion is always there as it relates to confidentiality. And one of the things I've recognized within the health system is that where persons might think that there's a breach in confidentiality, it's a perception. And what I have witnessed for myself with patients speak openly in open spaces about things concerning their own health, their mental health, physical health, other health, whatever. When that is taken and it is taken to the street, then it's easy to point a finger that the nurse did it or the doctor did it or whomever else did it. But sometimes you're the ones who are exposing yourselves as well. And it is important for persons to take accountability. I think a big part of mental wellness is accountability and ownership. A big part is introspection. A big part is trusting and understanding yourself, and when you're better able to manage yourself emotionally and otherwise, you can then be able to manage situations or social spaces. When we think in terms of emotional intelligence, we are looking at the fact that there's a level of awareness that each individual needs to have. But persons are not willing. And this is one of the things that we have to constantly advocate, that before you start projecting outwardly, let's look inwardly. Let's look at some of the things that you have not dealt with over the years. A lot of persons are walking around with childhood traumas, different things that sometimes persons have not even recognized that they are carrying trauma. And because of that, a lot of persons, workers, employees, you're in survivor's mode, which means that you're constantly at a point of defense. Again, the system sometimes would have allowed for that to happen, that persons feel I constantly have to defend myself, as opposed to be free in a sense that I can just simply have the autonomy and the independence to do certain things. In terms of some of the things that we can consider within the public service in itself to change the culture is, one, change the mindset as it relates to mental illness and mental wellness. We need to also understand that just as mental illness is something that you look at and sometimes there's a stigma has been attached to it, there's so many other considerations for other illnesses. Somebody with diabetes, hypertension, cancer, all of these things have a mental wellness component as well. So persons tend to think that, oh, I'm looking only for somebody with schizophrenia or somebody with bipolar. But somebody with diabetes, hypertension, they're also carrying a lot as well that may not allow them to cope effectively in such a way that they can produce. So when we think now of the workplace being a better space, we have to think not just from a standpoint of a generalized framework, but it has to be equitable, meaning that you have to meet people at the point of their need. For me, for instance, let's say, I'm just throwing an example. I am going to work and I have a terrible back injury, sciatica or something. All of us are issued the same chairs. Every day, I literally have to be walking about in order to expand my spine so that I am not feeling the crushing pain. A supervisor sees me from my desk. Why are you from your desk? Well, sir, miss, I need XYZ. No, go and sit. And it becomes almost like a master-slave type mentality that persons are not opening the avenue for conversation to understand what is needed. When we look at some of the global trends and changes, take for instance in Japan and China, ergonomics is something that is very much considered. That chairs and desk, lighting, all of these things have to be appropriate for the worker. They have flexible work hours. Also, I think within one of those countries, Organizations also have nap time during the day, siesta, that at a point you can literally recline your chair and you take a nap. There's also the consideration that if I am functional mentally at the time of 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., then that should be the time I work, versus somebody who comes into work at 8, but mentally you're not there. These are the considerations we have to get to if we're going to, stand up in this global market. But however, we have to take accountability, because part of it always goes back to the individual, and can we trust our workers? Because we often say, I have advocate for mental health days, but what do you do on your mental health day? So you're saying that I cannot come into work because I'm not functional, and we understand this. But then you are in situations that is counterproductive to the reason why you want the day off. So then you compromise the system, and then persons feel, supervisors and other persons feel, how can I trust that what you're stating is what is actually happening? Again, if I am trusting then in terms of flexible work hours that I'm giving you the leeway to do work and then you're not producing, then we have to have the structure in place that you have to come in. And then persons feel then that I'm being penalized, I'm being, pressured. But it is a two-way street. We have to understand as individual workers, you have a part to play, as well as supervisors and the leadership have a part to play. One of the other things I've recognized within the system, good workers are basically reinforced with more work. So the better you work, the more work and responsibilities you have.
Correct.
And whilst that might be somewhat beneficial to that worker that you're developing your grid, it is not allowing for legacy or for transference for other persons to grow as well. So we have to have a system in place where persons recognize that as a part of a team, we have to know that you are as strong as your weakest link. Everybody has to pull their weight. Everybody has to work together, but we have to have consensus in terms of the goals that we want to achieve. As it relates to the stressful mindset that persons have relating to the vaccine, taking it or not taking it, that goes along with any form of illness right now. I would suggest to persons continual checks, physical, medical checks, make it mandatory that whether you do it on your birthday, that you do a comprehensive blood work. And you just have to keep following up. Live healthy as best as you can, meaning look at the things you eat, look at your sleep, your exercise, look at your social space, because people take it for granted and think it's just stress at work. But sometimes you're in some relationships you need to get out of. You're in some friendships you need to get out of. And a lot of times we just simply place everything within the workspace. But it's a comprehensive thing, and we have to constantly be assessing ourselves and figuring out where we're at and know exactly what we need to do to make the changes for our own benefit as well.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. Well, we have heard a lot about safe minds and strong workers and better workplaces. If possible, and Dr. Miller just mentioned with regards to the COVID-19 mandate, as not only that, but things that can help workers. But I'm going to ask a specific question to Dr. Miller, and after that, I'm going to let persons do the takeaway, their summary, right? This question came in several different times, the same question, so that's why I opted to ask it. What support should be available for employees returning to work after illness or trauma, especially related to grief? What sort of support should be available to workers? Because workers have, I was told of a case where workers just return. You just get days off and you just return to work. Nobody looks at your mental capacity, your functionality, if you're physically able to, financially, what? So what should be in place for workers returning after a period of long illness or grief?
Okay, so it's important, first and foremost, we look at the environment first before the person actually would have left. So is this a conducive space where persons have the ally or the support to actually talk? Because somebody leaving and coming back to the same space that was considered toxic, there's not much that is going to happen differently. So we have to start always at the front end of making sure that even as you have new employees, you have persons there, that the environment is conducive for your emotional well-being. That persons are open to the idea of sharing what is happening with them. Now, somebody who is off for a long period of time because of illness, depending on that illness, there is the consideration now whether or not this is something that should be shared with the staff. Some persons take people's information and weaponize it. So you have to now be very cautious in terms of what you share for people, and that individual will have to give the permission for that information to be shared. Now, if it is something that is physically disabling, that now they're back, they will need certain consideration, then obviously these things have to be put in place at the workplace for that person to be functional. Whether it's a different chair, different desk, different lighting, accommodation for mobility, whatever the issue is, that will be something that has to be discussed if the person is returning to be functional. As it relates to grief, we have to know that grief in itself, everyone grieves differently. So expectations have to be managed. Not because somebody returned to work, and sometimes people return to work because they want to get, basically dive back into some activity to distract them from the emotional pain that they're carrying. It means then that you have to be vigilant and mindful enough and sensitive, understanding that not because somebody is functional in terms of their productivity means that emotionally they are stable. Which means at different points you still have to give leeway to ask basic questions. How are you doing today? Do you need to talk? Do you need some time? Whatever the case is, and hopefully the individual is open and transparent enough and honest enough to share, to say, listen, this is where I'm at now. And we constantly assess and to see whether or not they need external help, to be referred to the EAP or any private counseling sessions or whatever else might be required for them to be able to continue in their path.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to close this panel discussion. I am going to ask each of the panelists to just give a last statement, whether it's a key takeaway point they wish to give, or a summary of the topic or the theme, and after which we are going to have our closing remarks by our General Sec and the vote of thanks. So, Ms. Davis, are you ready for me? Okay, so Shelley, you're up. Yes, I like to harass Shelley.
I want to leave something with us, something that was shared yesterday from the seminar that I attended. And it has to do with how do we create a psychological safe workplace. And there are some factors that were listed. It says foster a culture of respect and inclusion, encourage open communication and feedback, regular review and update workplace policies, and provide clear referral pathways for support. And the last one is something I think we're lacking a lot of the times. that we may not know of ourselves as to how to refer persons. Or sometimes we think persons don't, as Dr. mentioned, we see them functioning and they completing their deadlines, and we tell ourselves that they are okay. But for us sometimes to ask, if you are okay, we have to understand that we are not dealing with robots, we're dealing with human beings, with feelings, with concerns, with fears. And once we get that part, we would be in a better place to know, okay, this person, yes, they're functioning, but let me at least find out. So what this speaker who delivered yesterday was trying to say, if we have all of this, or if we practice this, together we can build a safer and a healthier workplace. Don't think that it's the workers, the employer doing you a favor. It's a fundamental right for you to have a safe and conducive workplace, a space to work, a place that you can feel happy, and a place that you can be at your best and produce. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Davis.
My takeaway is that when unions and policymakers work together to ratify all of the protections that are needed, we move from promises to progress. We move from slogans to solutions, and we build a future where every worker can proudly say, my mind is safe, my work is strong, and my workplace is better. So this theme reminds us that when we protect workers' mental health and well-being, which is the safe minds, they become stronger and more resilient, which in turn give you stronger workers. And together, that strength builds fairer, healthier, and more productive organizations. A better workplace for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Miller?
Okay, I would like to basically wrap up by suggesting an equation. And the equation says that better workplaces and safe minds equals strong workers. And I would like to use the analogy. A strong worker, that's the engine, powerful and capable. A safe mind, that's the lubricant or the oil that keeps the engine moving and not seizing up. A better workplace is the chassis, which supports the engine from falling apart. By aligning our safe minds, strong workers, and better workplaces, we create a self-sustaining engine of growth where we move from managing people to unlocking them. And I think that even when we think in terms of human beings, it is never about the management or the control, but it's getting persons to the point where they can fulfill and optimize the very best version of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. Mr. Thomas.
Well, I'm sorry that I didn't get the other parts of the conversation, but I think that if we look at a team, safe minds, stronger workers, better workplaces, I think they're all so connected to each other. And the stronger the worker, I think the better the workplace you would have. And I think one of the ways in which we do that is to have open, constant communication between workers, between management. I think sometimes in the workplace, too many of us are social climbers. And because we are social climbers, we want to climb over each other to get ahead, rather than see that, look, let's try to do this on merit. I don't have to pull you down. I can advance myself. I can go to school. I can get a first degree. I can get a graduate degree and let my work propel me forward, rather than to be like, in some African traditions, they talk about people are lovers of woos woos. You just like to talk. the chat. So I think that we don't want that. I think we want to be considerate as well, you know. If we are considerate of each other, I think that we make for, you know, our conscience clear, our mind is safe, we build stronger workplace, we build camaraderie, and if we have camaraderie at work, we are building, we don't have the clutter where we are fighting with each other, and we end up with a stronger workplace. I think that there's an importance of community. You know, some people believe that, I remember when Margaret Thatcher used to be the Prime Minister of England, she said there's no such thing as community, that all of us are individuals and we have to look out for ourselves. I think there's a myth to that. I move from in much the same way that we say that it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community. It takes all of us working hand in hand. I think that's what one of the unions has as a team. Is
Hand in
teachers.
hand, yes.
Yeah. We work hand in hand right? And finally, I think we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to be patient with ourselves, and we need to be patient with others. Too often we jump to conclusions. Too often we see ourselves as inadequate rather than working to bring the best out of ourselves. I think that if we put all of those things in place in line with everything that everybody else have said, we are certain to have safer minds, stronger workers, and even better workplace for all of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. One of the things that I often say is one hand can't clap. That is my thing. And I think looking back at the theme and based on what everybody has said here, it is so important that we recognize that to have safe minds, stronger workers, and better workplaces, everybody must be on board. It cannot just be the unions or the government or the workers or the employees, but it must be everyone coming together as a community, unified to make everything better and make better workplaces. That's the only how we're going to have safe minds, stronger workers, and better workplaces. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up we are at the end of our panel discussion. At this time, I'll ask our General Secretary, Sister Tishana Reed Dabrio, to give us closing remarks.
Good evening. Good evening. We have come to the end of this panel discussion. As we reflect on the depth and significance of the conversation shared under the theme, Safe Minds, Strong Workers, Better Workplaces, the insights explored today reinforce a clear message. The health of our workplaces depends on the mental well-being of our people. This discussion has highlighted the need for continued action to reduce possible stigma, to strengthen support systems, and to create environments where workers feel respected, valued, and heard. A safe mind is not a luxury. It is essential to building a workforce that is resilient, productive, and prepared to meet the demands of a changing world. The responsibility now lies with each of us to carry these ideas forward, whether in leadership, policy making, or daily interactions. There is a role to play in shaping workplaces that promote dignity, balance, and growth. Let this not be the end of the conversation, but the beginning of a sustained commitment to building safer minds, stronger workers, and better workplaces across St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay, good evening. I am Roxanne Pompey. I have the honor of bringing the vote of thanks. So first on my list is the 3 trade unions who came together to revitalize the National Labor Congress that was dormant for a very long time. So I would like to thank the Public Service Union, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers Union, the Commercial, Technical and Allied Workers Union for taking this initiative. It's a timely and very important. I would like to thank the Solidarity Car Park Inc. for sponsoring this important event. Also our chairperson, she have many titles, but tonight she was our chairperson and she did an excellent job, Miss Fiona Charles Williams. Our General Secretary, Tishana Reed Davrio. We applaud you for a work well done. She brought the welcome remarks. Also, I would like to thank her and family, extended the thank you for her family for the development of the logo. So we say thank you and we appreciate you and your family much. I would also like to thank Sister Dorcas Williams, Dorcas Joseph Williams. She was the one who came up with the team. So the thing about the team, when I heard Dr. Miller describe the team as an engine, I'm like, wow, I never looked at it in that light. So it's very, it's very timely that we look at the mental health and the well-being of persons and to know that this will help them to generate more and be more productive and have a more productive workplace. So thank you very much, Miss Sister Dorcas Williams, for that team. We also like to thank Sister Desrita Jilks Boucher from Love It Designs for designing the table and all these in balloons and all that. She took the time out from her study leave, and we also have assistance from Sister Dorcas and Sister Jean Trimingham from the Public Service Union staff. We're not forgetting the Office of the Public Service Union. Sister Nikki and her staff, they are very instrumental in the administrative aspect of this event. The management and staff of Peace Memorial Hall, we say thank you. We also like to thank Role Model Fruits for the fruit basket that you're seeing at the front. We have Mr. Barry Black and team for bringing us the live event here tonight. We also would like to thank the executive of the National Labor Congress. So we also like to extend thanks also to the panelists. Oh, the media as well. Yes, I like to extend thanks to the media. But very importantly, I like to give thanks to the panelists. And I'm hoping for that day when that mental health day will take effect. So I give thanks to Mr. Jomo Thomas, Sanga Thomas, Dr. Miller. We have Sister Alexander Ross, and we also have Sister Kathleen Nanton Davis. So we share our appreciation in you coming forth, taking the time off from your busy schedule. So I know how your schedule could be busy, especially Nurse Ross. We always pick on her. So we thank you very much and for bringing this important discussion. It's timely and we need it. And I think that's it. I've covered everyone, right? I'm not forgetting the audience. Yes, both here and live. We thank you and we appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much, Sister Pompey, for bringing the vote of thanks, and that's the last thing I have to say. I'm wishing everybody a pleasant good evening. Before the panelists leave, we have a token of appreciation for the panelists. So I'm going to invite Brother Gary Lewis, our treasurer. That's the man who usually spends the money, so we have to let him present to the panelists the token of appreciation.